Why did my friends expect me to pay for their missed vacation flight? The 4:15 a.m. pickup time should have given us plenty of buffer for a 6:20 flight, but what started as a simple favor for two friends turned into a blame game that would test our entire friendship when poor planning met airport reality. When Lisa and Sarah asked me to drive them to the airport for their weekend trip, I thought I was just being a good friend. I had no idea I'd end up being held financially responsible for their travel disasters. The night before their departure, we discussed timing carefully. The airport website recommended arriving by 4 a.m. for their early morning flight, which meant leaving our city around 3 given the hour-long drive, but Lisa immediately balked at the early arrival, saying 2 hours seemed excessive for a domestic flight. I agreed, sharing my experience that 45 minutes to an hour was usually sufficient, especially for early morning departures when airports are less crowded. Sarah preferred playing it safe with extra time, but after some discussion, they settled on a compromise. I'd pick them up at 4:15, getting us to the airport around 5:15 for boarding that started around 6. The math seemed reasonable, and I confirmed I'd be there exactly on time since every minute mattered with their tight schedule. Standing outside their building at exactly 4:15 a.m., I waited as the minutes ticked by with no sign of either friend. At 4:30, they finally emerged, both clearly stressed about the 15-minute delay they'd created by not being ready when they'd asked me to arrive. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd criticized the tight timing while simultaneously making it even tighter through their own poor preparation. I drove faster than usual to make up time, getting us to the airport shortly after 5:20 a.m. After quick goodbyes, I headed home thinking they'd make their flight comfortably, even with the slight delay. My experience with early morning travel had always been smooth and efficient, with minimal crowds and quick processing times that made tight connections manageable. The phone call came an hour later with news that completely blindsided me. They'd missed their flight, a long security line, an extensive bag search for Lisa, and Sarah's inexplicable decision to use the bathroom when they were already cutting it close had cost them their weekend trip. The next flight wasn't until the following day, making their short vacation financially and logistically impossible. Instead of accepting responsibility for the cascade of poor decisions that led to missing their departure, both friends immediately began assigning blame to everyone except themselves. Lisa claimed I'd talked her into the late arrival time, despite the fact that she'd been the one initially objecting to arriving 2 hours early. Sarah demanded that either Lisa or I reimburse her ticket cost, since she'd supposedly been overruled about wanting more buffer time. The accusations were particularly frustrating because they ignored the clear sequence of events that led to their missed flight. They'd been 15 minutes late getting ready despite knowing we had minimal time to spare. They'd encountered unusually long security lines that couldn't have been predicted. Lisa's bag had been randomly selected for additional screening, and most baffling of all, Sarah had chosen to make an additional bathroom stop when they were already running behind schedule. Lisa's claim that I'd overruled her desire for more time was completely false. I'd explicitly told them the decision was theirs, and to simply tell me when they wanted to be picked up. Sarah's assertion that she'd been talked into anything was equally ridiculous, since she'd participated in the timing discussion and agreed to the final schedule. Both were rewriting history to avoid accountability for their own choices. My boyfriend's suggestion that I should pay half the costs because it was partially my fault felt like enabling their blame-shifting behavior. I'd provided exactly the service they'd requested at exactly the time they'd specified, even making up time when their own delays threatened the schedule. The idea that sharing travel advice made me financially responsible for their poor execution was absurd. The bathroom incident alone demonstrated how their priorities had contributed to missing the flight. When you're cutting departure timing close, every minute matters, and voluntary delays for non-essential activities show a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation's urgency. Sarah's decision to prioritize comfort over catching her flight revealed that she hadn't internalized the time pressure they were under. Airport travel requires personal responsibility, backup planning, and acceptance that sometimes things go wrong despite everyone's best efforts. My friends had made multiple choices that contributed to their missed departure, from being late getting ready to making unnecessary stops when time was critical. Expecting me to absorb the financial consequences of their decisions would set a terrible precedent for future favors. The entire situation illustrated why I typically prefer to handle my own transportation for important travel. When you're responsible for your own timing and decisions, there's no one else to blame when things go wrong. But when you delegate responsibility to others while retaining decision-making authority, you create opportunities for exactly this kind of blame shifting when outcomes don't meet expectations. I felt bad that their weekend plans had been ruined, but covering their flight costs would essentially be paying them for the privilege of being blamed for their own poor planning and execution.